We're always trying to figure out how to connect with people
Well, yeah.
now. And this really interesting survey came out of the University of Chicago.
Oh, yeah. What did it find?
Well, it said that, believe it or not, the second biggest interest for adults right after health is understanding and, well, getting along with other people,
Wow, number two. That's actually huge.
isn't it? And it kind of perfectly sets the stage for what we're digging into today. We're doing a deep dive into a real classic on this exact topic.
Yeah.
Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Carnegie. A foundational text, first published way back in 1937, wasn't it?
Exactly, 1937.
Yeah.
And its success story is pretty amazing.
It really is. I mean, it wasn't some slow build-up. It basically took off like a rocket right from the start.
An overnight sensation almost.
Pretty much. The first print run was small. Nobody really saw it coming. But it just tapped into something so, well, so human.
And it's stuck around. Translated into tons of languages, read across generations, different cultures.
It's got incredible staying power.
Definitely. And look, this isn't just some dusty old advice book we're looking at, this deep dive. It's really meant for you listening right now.
Yeah, whether you're, dealing with office politics, trying to strengthen relationships at home.
Or even if you're just curious about, well, what makes people tick? We want to unpack some of these core ideas and see why they still feel so relevant.
Think of it like uncovering these timeless principles for connection.
And what's really compelling is the research behind it, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't just Carnegie's opinion. He spent years on this. Meticulous research, real-world testing.
He talked to some heavy hitters, too.
Didn't he just? Innovators like Marconi, Edison, political figures like FDR, business leaders like O&D Young, even movie stars like Mary Pickford.
Wow. Trying to figure out their secrets for dealing with people.
Exactly. And it started small, just a short talk, but it grew over like 15 years based on teaching thousands of adults in his courses. It evolved into the book we know.
And he truly believed this stuff worked, didn't he? Said it was like magic.
He did. He claimed these principles could genuinely revolutionize lives.
Okay, so for today's deep dive, we're zeroing in on part one of the book, Fundamental Techniques in Handling People.
Good place to start, the foundations.
Right. We're going to tackle two big ideas. First, this really strong stance on avoiding criticism. And second, what he called the big secret, how to get someone else to genuinely want to do something.
The art of motivating others, essentially.
Let's jump right into that first one then. Principle number one, don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Okay. Sounds straightforward on the surface, maybe.
Maybe, but Carnegie uses some pretty dramatic stories to show how deep this goes.
He does. He brings up Two Gun Crowley.
The infamous killer. Right?
Yeah. And even when he was cornered, facing execution, he was writing letters saying, "Under my coat is a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm." He saw himself as defending himself.
Wild. No self-blame at all.
None. And Al Capone, too. Public enemy number one. But he saw himself as, like, a public benefactor, providing lighter pleasures, he called it, and felt he was just being hounded unfairly.
It's incredible, that human tendency to just rationalize everything, even the worst actions.
It really is. We build these narratives to protect our ego. Carnegie even contrasts this with someone like John Wanamaker.
The department store founder?
Right. Wanamaker apparently said he learned decades earlier that criticizing people is just foolish. He basically said, look, I've got my own limitations to deal with. Why should I focus on others' flaws?
It's a real lesson in humility, isn't it? Focus on your own stuff first.
Precisely. It reminds me, too, of, think about big scandals like the Teapot Dome scandal back in the Harding administration.
Yeah, with the oil leases.
Right. Albert Fall, the Secretary of the Interior, basically gave away valuable government resources to a buddy for personal gain. Huge scandal. But you can bet even he had a story in his head that made it okay somehow.
We're all experts at self-justification.
Masters of it. And Carnegie points out this isn't just for criminals or corrupt politicians. He talks about Abraham Lincoln,
who we think of as this master of people skills.
Exactly. But young Lincoln, apparently he loved writing critical letters, even ridiculing poems about people he disagreed with.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it backfired. Created real, lasting bitterness and enemies. He learned the hard way.
So how did he change?
Well, Carnegie highlights this incredible moment after the Battle of Gettysburg. Huge Union victory. Lee's army is retreating, totally vulnerable.
Right. Rainy, trapped.
Exactly. Lincoln sees this golden chance to potentially end the war right there. He orders General Meade to attack, pursue relentlessly.
But Meade hesitated. Let Lee get away.
He did, and Lincoln was, well, beyond frustrated, devastated. He felt the war could have been over. So he wrote this letter to Meade.
Letting him have it, presumably.
You'd think so. But here's the thing. By this point, Lincoln had learned his lesson about criticism. The letter expresses his deep disappointment, absolutely. He wrote, "My dear General, I do not believe you appreciate the magnitude of the misfortune involved in Lee's escape. Your golden opportunity is gone, and I am distressed immeasurably because of it."
Okay, so he stated the facts and his feelings, but
But it wasn't a vicious attack. It wasn't full of condemnation. It was actually quite restrained, considering the stakes and Lincoln's feelings. And you know what?
Right.
He never even sent the letter.
Really, why not?
Carnegie suggests Lincoln realized, what good would it do? It would just make Meade defensive, hurt his pride, maybe make him resentful. It wouldn't change the past or likely help future battles.
Wow, that shows incredible self-control and understanding of human nature.
Doesn't it? And to really hammer home the damage criticism does, especially close to home, Carnegie includes that piece, Father Forgets.
Oh, I remember reading that. It's heartbreaking.
It really is. This father looking at his sleeping son, just full of regret for nagging him all day about, muddy shoes, messy room, little kid stuff.
Realizing he was just being a kid, and the constant fault-finding was just cruel, almost.
Exactly. A poor reward for being a boy, as the piece says. It's such a powerful reminder of the sting of criticism, especially from loved ones.
So the big takeaway from all this is pretty clear, then.
Yeah, I think so. Criticism puts people on the defensive. It wounds their pride, sparks resentment, and it almost never leads to lasting positive change. It usually just makes people dig in their heels.
Okay, so if that's what not to do, let's talk about the flip side.
Okay.
Carnegie's big secret. Principle number 2.
Right. Give honest and sincere appreciation. But it's tied into something even more fundamental. The only way on earth to influence other people is to talk about what they want and show them how to get it. Basically, you have to make them want to do it.
Oh, okay. Not forcing, not manipulating, but genuinely tapping into their own desires.
Precisely. He mentions Freud's ideas about, the drives we have, and John Dewey's point about the deepest urge in human nature being the desire to be important.
That need to feel valued, significant.
Exactly. And this isn't about laying on thick, fake flattery that's usually obvious and counterproductive. It's about genuine, sincere appreciation that connects with that core need.
Okay, so how does this play out? He must have examples.
Oh, plenty.
Yeah.
He tells a funny one about someone writing to their Uncle Andrew needing money, but they got so caught up in the pleasantries they actually forgot to include the request in the letter.
No way. What happened?
The uncle just wrote back thanking them for the nice letter, completely missed the unstated point because the writer was only focused on their need, not making the desire clear.
Huh. A perfect, if slightly awkward, illustration of being out of sync.
Definitely. Then there's a more practical one about Stan Novak and his little son Tim, who absolutely did not want to go to kindergarten.
Okay. Common problem for parents. What did Stan do? Push him. Bribe him.
Well, his first impulse might have been that, but instead, he and his wife stopped and thought, okay, if we were Tim, what would make kindergarten seem exciting?
Ah, putting themselves in his shoes.
Exactly. They brainstormed all the fun stuff. Finger painting, singing songs, making new friends. Then they started doing those things at home, talking enthusiastically about how Tim would get to do all this at school.
So they built up the desire in Tim.
Precisely. They focused on his potential wants, not their own demand that he goes. And guess what? Tim's resistance just melted away. He couldn't wait to go. No arguments, no tears needed.
That's a great story. Shifting perspective makes all the difference.
It really does. And it works in business, too. Carnegie shares his own story about renting a hotel ballroom for his lecture series.
Right, I remember this one. They suddenly hiked the rent way up.
Tripled it.
Yeah.
After his tickets were printed, ads were out, a real jam. But he didn't storm in demanding they honor the old rate or complaining about the unfairness.
What did he do instead?
He went to the manager and focused entirely on the hotel's perspective. He literally made a list of advantages and disadvantages for the hotel.
Okay. Like what?
Under advantages, he basically put ballroom free. He explained, look, if I don't rent it these 20 nights, you have it open for dances, conventions, things that might bring in more money than my lectures.
Appealing to their potential for higher profit. Clever. And disadvantages.
Under disadvantages, he pointed out the concrete income they'd lose by canceling him. He framed the whole thing around their interests, their desire for profit, without ever saying, I want to lower rent.
And the result?
The manager, seeing Carnegie understood his problems and wasn't just focused on his own, reduced the increase from 300% down to just 50%.
Wow, that's really effective. It perfectly illustrates that Henry Ford, quote, Carnegie loves.
If there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own.
Such a simple idea, but so powerful.
And yet, Carnegie points out, how often do we actually do it? Most of the time, we're stuck in our own viewpoint.
He gives examples of bad sales letters, right?
Oh, yeah, some real clunkers, all focused on the Acme company desires or we want your business. They completely ignore what the recipient might be thinking about or worrying about.
Their mortgage, their health, their kids.
Exactly. People are primarily interested in themselves. Those letters just scream, I don't care about you, I just want your money. Instant turnoff.
It's such a contrast to the effective approach, like that freight terminal example.
Right. The first letter the superintendent wrote was all about their problems. Trucks arriving late, causing congestion for them. The benefit to the customer was just a tiny afterthought.
Not very motivating for the customer.
Not at all. But the revised version. It started with appreciation for their business, acknowledged their value, and then explained how late arrivals caused problems for the customer, delays for their trucks, their schedules being messed up.
So it framed the request, deliver earlier entirely in terms of the customer's self-interest.
Bingo! Suddenly, it makes sense for the customer to cooperate because it helps them. It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything.
We see the same thing with that job applicant, Barbara Anderson, right?
Yeah.
Applying to banks in Phoenix.
Yeah, great example. She didn't just say, hi, I want a job in Phoenix. She focused on what she could do for them.
Like, Phoenix banks are growing fast, and my 10 years of experience in X, Y, and Z can help you manage that growth effectively.
Exactly. She addressed their likely needs and desires. And the result was she got interview offers from almost every bank she wrote to.
It's about offering value from their perspective, not just asking for something. Owen D. Young had that quote about it.
Right, about how people who can genuinely understand others' minds never need to worry about their future. It's about empathy, really.
And this applies just as much in personal life, doesn't it? Like with kids.
Absolutely. Carnegie talks about parents struggling with an underweight child who just wouldn't eat. Nagging, scolding, totally ineffective.
Until they figured out what the child wanted.
Right. They had to connect their goal, eat healthy food, with something that appealed to the child's desires. Maybe making it a game or connecting it to getting stronger to play.
And that other story, the little girl who wouldn't eat breakfast cereal.
Yeah, until her father, Katie Dutchman, let her help make it. Suddenly it was her creation. She was imitating mom, feeling grown up and important.
Tapped right into her desires.
Exactly. It all comes back to understanding what motivates the other person.
It seems so fundamental, yet we often default to our own perspective. Carnegie mentions that phone company study.
Oh yeah, finding that I is the most frequently used word in phone conversations tells you something, doesn't it?
We're naturally self-focused.
We are. And Alfred Adler, the psychologist, made a really strong point about this. He said, the person who isn't interested in their fellow human beings has the greatest difficulties in life and causes the most harm.
So genuine interest in others is crucial, not just as a technique, but fundamentally.
Absolutely. Look at Theodore Roosevelt. Carnegie attributes much of his immense popularity to his genuine, sincere interest in people from all walks of life.
Like that story about him calling his valet's wife just to tell her about a bobwhite he saw outside her cottage window.
Yeah, or how he'd greet the kitchen staff by name. It showed he actually saw them, valued them as individuals. That's incredibly powerful.
And Carnegie found this worked for him personally too, right?
Yeah.
Getting busy authors to engage.
Yes, simply by expressing genuine, specific admiration for their work. Not flattery, but showing he'd actually read it and appreciated it. People respond to sincere interest.
Or the bank employee saving Mrs. Rosedale's account.
Not by pushing products, but by showing real concern for her mother's health. Making that human connection.
It builds trust.
It does. And then there's C.M. Naffel Jr., the fuel salesman who tried for years to sell to this big chain store. Got nowhere, just got angry.
Until he changed his whole approach.
Totally. Instead of complaining or pushing his product, he went to the executive and asked for his help and expertise for a debate he was supposedly having. Appealed to the executive's desire to feel important, to share his knowledge.
And what happened?
The executive talked for ages, felt great about it, and then, almost as an afterthought, placed a huge fuel order with Naffel. The focus shifted from conflict to connection.
Amazing. It really is about making the other person feel valued.
It is. And that final story Carnegie shares about the student nurse and the lonely 10-year-old boy in the hospital on Thanksgiving.
Oh, that one's so moving.
Isn't it? She didn't do anything grand. She just spent a little time with him, showed genuine interest, brought him some food, made him feel less alone. Simple kindness.
But it made all the difference to him.
Exactly. All these stories, from presidents to salesmen to nurses, they all point to the same core principle. Genuine interest in other people is the bedrock. It builds liking, trust, cooperation, friendship. Everything flows from that.
So, as we sort of wrap up this part of our deep dive into Carnegie's fundamentals, it feels like these two principles are really intertwined.
They absolutely are. First, you clear the ground, stop criticizing, condemning, complaining. That just creates resistance.
Right. Get rid of the negatives that push people away.
And then you build connection using the big secret. Give that honest, sincere appreciation. But crucially, do it by focusing on their wants, their perspective, their desire to feel important.
See the world through their eyes for a moment.
That's the key. And maybe for everyone listening, it's worth reflecting on this a bit. Think about your own interactions.
Yeah, like when has criticism just made things worse? When have you seen defensiveness pop up immediately?
And on the flip side, when has taking a moment to genuinely appreciate someone or really tried to understand their point of view actually made a positive difference?
Even a small difference.
Exactly. Maybe try consciously applying one of these ideas in an interaction today or tomorrow. Just see what happens.
And obviously, if this has piqued your interest, there's so much more in the full book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's packed with more examples and nuances.
Definitely worth exploring further if these ideas resonate.
So maybe a final thought to leave everyone with.
Okay.
If, as Carnegie showed, even notorious figures like Two Gun Crowley genuinely couldn't see fault in themselves,
Blind to their own actions.
then how much harder might it be for us in our everyday lives to recognize our own biases, our own little judgments that creep in when we interact with people?
That's a really good point. We all have those blind spots.
And if that's true, what might actually change if we made a conscious effort to shift, to move away from that default critical stance and actively try to find something to genuinely appreciate, or to really try and understand the other person's world?
Where could that shift lead? What pathways might open up if we approached connection with that mindset? Something to think about.